Welcome to the E-Show with Neil Ravin. With over 1,000 NCAA commitments, the EHL is the proven path to college. Turn it up and learn more about the college placement leader at the Division II and III levels.
Welcome to the E-Show, presented by the Penalty Box Foundation. The Foundation's mission centers around their daily motto, we take care of our own, as they help out all of those within the hockey community who've experienced a catastrophic event. Learn more at penaltyboxfoundation.org. What's up? My name is Neil Ravin, and this is episode number 73 of the E-Show. And on this week's episode, we feature an exclusive interview with Mike Gempeler, the founder and director of the CCM Showcase in Westminster, Colorado. The annual event takes place over Memorial Day weekend and brings together over 400 players and 150 scouts. The EHL will be well represented once again this weekend, with teams throughout the EHL and EHLP heading out in search of players to bring back to the East Coast. I'm joined now by Mike Gempeler, the founder and director of the CCM Showcase, where I'm heading this weekend. How's it going, Mike?
Good. Great. Thanks for having me, Neil.
And thanks for coming on the podcast, and thanks for putting on this weekend's event once again. This is, I think, my third year coming out to Denver. Obviously, we have a bunch of teams coming out there as well. How long has the CCM Showcase been taking place for?
This is the 11th year in 2021. We've been running it at the Ice Center at the Promenade in Westminster, which is a northern suburb of Denver, Memorial Day weekend every year for the last 11 years.
And what changes and adjustments have you made over those 11 years to turn it into the event that it is today?
You know, a couple of simple things, nothing major. You know, we tried to do the on-ice testing, which really didn't go well. You know, I'm a big believer in that on-ice testing where they get the lasers out and everything, you know, on the course of a season where you can test a kid at the beginning and at the end. But in our environment, it really didn't make sense. We actually heard feedback directly from the coaches saying, you know, we don't look at that data. What the coaches really wanted were more chances to meet the kids and watch the kids, whether that's, you know, all-star games or goalie sessions, or, you know, some things we've added like the meet and greet, which has become incredibly popular, stuff like that. And then another little tweak we did thanks to COVID, I don't know how many things got better because of COVID, but this little tweak certainly helped, was we've moved the face-to-face meetings outdoors. And if you've ever been to Colorado in May, you know it's a beautiful place to be. So now you see all around the lobby outside the rink and out front, all the coaches meeting with players and their families. That's a really cool scene as well.
And of course, last year, you actually had to have the event in July because of the way that everything played itself out. But I got to see all those face-to-face meetings in person there taking place outside. When those meetings started to take place, obviously the challenging times that we were in, being able to pull off the event, was that the moment when you realized, all right, we actually did pull this off, when you got to see all those meetings take place right in front of you?
Well, that was certainly gratifying because that's what people are there for, you know, to get seen and get noticed, get the exposure, meet the junior coaches. And of course, the coaches need to meet the players. But yeah, even, I mean, we had a big scare the night before in terms of mask mandates coming down from the governor. So yep. I'm not sure if it hit me when I was watching the people are outside, or actually when we got through the final All-Star game where I maybe took a breath that said, holy cow, we pulled it off.
In the car ride home. So
yeah, exactly.
You mentioned 11 years of the event. For me, obviously, I pointed out this is my third year coming out, but we've had teams coming, it seems like forever since I've at least joined the league. Where have you seen the most growth in the event? And do you have a vision to try and make it bigger and longer, or do you feel the current structure that you have kind of maximizes the value of the overall event?
You know, that's a good question. Growth, I mean, we've been full for 8 of 11 years, you know, so if anything, it sells out earlier and earlier every year. So maybe that's the place where we see the most growth just with the interest at front level from people and the fact that people are registering so soon. Technically, we could take more kids and make it bigger and longer. I mean, we've got over 100 kids on the wait list right now. But to be honest, in my opinion, at least, that would dilute the product. Yeah. You know, we don't need a 6 or 7 day event. We don't need 400 coaches and 800 kids. We just need the kids that, you know, are there to get more looks and to get that exposure that they need without diluting the product.
And there's so many events that players have the chance to partake in the summer. Do you think that by having more of not, I don't want to say a smaller pool because 400 players is still a lot of players, but by having, maybe a smaller camp because of that, does that make the event that much bigger, making it more quote unquote selective?
Well, I certainly think so. Over the years, I've been asked by a couple of different cities east of us, to bring another showcase out there just because of the success we've had in Denver. And I think what you mentioned is spot on. What's the point of having two events if it's going to dilute the two when you can, stick with the weekend you built and the reputation you built around that weekend, and just make sure, put all your efforts into making that the best event possible.
Yep. And I want to go back to last year again, because as I mentioned, you had to push it off to July. As you mentioned, you always have it on the holiday weekend in May, but you had to push it off to July. And I know that leading up to it, you were a little bit nervous. We had a few texts. You were anxious at times. How important was it for you that no matter what, you pulled off the event?
Yeah, last year was tough, but I'm certainly not the only person in that boat. It was great. It was very gratifying to pull it off, but leading up to it, there were, it was a roller coaster. I mean, you get one message one day and one the next, but it was so great to pull off. I mean, yes, the kids needed the exposure. They needed the scouting. The teams needed a chance to find kids because people were limited on how much they could travel. So I think from the hockey side, I think it's pretty obvious why it was important to pull it off. What really struck me was the interpersonal side of things. These kids, these poor kids, they're schooling at home, or at that time, actually last year, they weren't in school at all. There's no hockey. There's no activities. They are really stuck and limited in their travel with the shutdown. So I think it comes down to, kind of the health and wellness of the kids, just getting them out there and seeing their friends again and being able to play. I can't tell you how many families reached out afterward to thank us for our efforts. And the efforts had nothing to do with their kid getting on a team. It really wasn't. It was, thanks for pulling this off and giving my kid an outlet to participate in the game he loves over the course of the weekend.
And now you fast forward to this weekend coming up. And as I've said on our podcast before, COVID is not over yet. I know there's a feeling that we're turning the corner around the country, different conversation, but are there still any hurdles or obstacles that you need to jump through in the state of Colorado to pull off the event this weekend?
That's a great question. With many answers based on the day you asked me. If we had done this before, a couple of weeks ago, there were still a lot of hurdles. But I'll be honest, the May 15th mandate came out, and the state of Colorado has lifted the mask mandates as well as really relaxed the indoor participant and spectator requirements. So we're almost back to 100% normal for this year's event, which I wouldn't have believed probably even 2 or 3 weeks ago.
And I think that's interesting because you pointed out earlier that you prefer to have the meet and greet with the players now outside. But now that restrictions are quote unquote, eased and things seem normal, is there ever the feeling like we should just revert back to the old way or keep sticking with that outdoor meeting because it's actually the better logistical concept for the event?
Well, I think people will probably fall back into old ruts because that's what we've done forever. But new this year, I am going to include, like we did last year, the player's cell phone in the scout book. So every coach and scout that attends the showcase for the benefit or for the intention of scouting the event and meeting kids, they will have that cell phone number. And I will be heavily encouraging everyone to reach out via cell phone, set up the meeting outside via the cell phone and a text, as opposed to chasing them into locker rooms or down hallways. So it may take a year or 2 or 3 to get there fully, but I've already had coaches reach out and ask if that was the plan because they really liked it. So there definitely will be some adoptions this year.
How early in the year, because we're obviously in May now, but how early in 2021 do junior coaches start reaching out to you with trying to get the early details, if I will, for the event?
I would say the earliest would be January of next year.
Okay.
I'll get a couple trickling in January and February, and then I send a save the date email to all the coaches on my list. And that's kind of the first notification. And then after that, of course, they start emailing all the time.
And then again, looking forward to this weekend's event, you mentioned the meet and greet. You mentioned the games that take place and the all-star games that kind of put a bow on things when all is said and done. What we haven't touched on yet are the seminars on Saturday night, where I've actually had the chance to participate last year as well. How important have adding those seminars been to the overall event, the value of the event?
I think it's one of the most important parts of the weekend, because this is a chance for parents to get the questions they have answered. Every kid is going to talk to a coach. That's fine and dandy. That's the whole purpose of it. But that doesn't help the parents. Yeah. So, and a lot of kids still struggle with it too, but just the basics that we cover, and really what we have come, our Saturday night seminars have morphed into what we call the Junior Hockey Roundtable. Yep. And it's really a Q&A. It's a chance for all those parents that are too shy or to ask the questions, or don't actually have someone to ask for questions, to come and get that out in a Q&A type environment.
Yeah, and I love when you have the microphone walking around the room, because you always say, now's a pretty good time. They're all right in front of you. And I sit up front there, and there's always an EHL coach or two with me, but you try and mix it up with coaches and representatives from all the different leagues. Why is that so important to you, to have all the different leagues up there in front of everyone?
Well, I think the first thing would be because each league is, a lot of leagues have different governing bodies. So that's one thing that is really confusing people right now. I think the next thing would be the confusion, or maybe the unknowns, between a pay-to-play league and a free league. What do those teams offer? There's, believe it or not, this may seem normal to us, but in the general sense, the whole tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 thing is foreign to people. So it's really good to have a wide range. You don't want to get one league up there or one person dominating the conversation and sell 200 people in a ballroom about that league. And I get it, that's their job, but it's also good to hear that answer from every league available.
And I know that you mentioned when we were talking offline, but for those that are listening at home, obviously you have the group that's up front there with the round table, but how many total scouts and how many different organizations, junior leagues and et cetera, do you bring in on an annual basis to the event?
We always have between 100 and 155 coaches and scouts at the event. 155 has been our max. That's why that number. But we always have that many. And it's every single junior league in the United States. And I would say half the junior leagues in Canada. And I say half because it'll be the ones that are just north of us. We're not going to get a team from Quebec, or probably not Ontario, but we'll get the BCHL, the AJHL, the SJ, the tier 2 clubs or leagues straight north of us. And of course, there's an asterisk with that. It's when the border allows. Yes. And this year we have 2 BCHL and 2 AJ, simply because they have American-based scouts. None of those coaches can get down here right now. Actually, they can get down here. They can't get them back.
That's a challenge. But back to the seminars for a second. Is there an overall message or two that you want people to walk out of the room with on Saturday night?
Yeah. The 2 points that I like to drive home, and make sure the coaches on stage drive home, and that every parent and player hears, are: 1, take your time. This is a long road. I like to joke that if you're 14 or 15 and have not been, quote unquote, recruited yet, it's not a big deal. There is no reason to panic. No need to panic. You got a long road ahead of you. Remember, you're going to play until you're 20. So is it smart to come to events like this and to come to seminars and listen to this? Yes, but please take your time. There is no rush. You have a long road ahead of you. And then the other thing that, this is not my opinion, this is one thing I like to regurgitate that I hear every single year from every single coach on the board, is make sure the person that is driving this train, the one that is reaching out to coaches and giving them emails and making phone calls, expressing their interest in their team, is the player. Mm-hmm. This stuff has to come from the player. It can't come from the parent. The coach does not want to receive an email that starts with, "Dear coach, comma, my son, ...
No, I completely agree.
Yep. The son needs to be the driving force, period.
And I think that's such a good point, because ultimately it's the player that's going to be playing the hockey, wherever that may be all across the country, whether it's in the EHL or any of the other leagues that are out there this week. For one final point, whenever I come out there, I find that I tell a similar story very consistently and often throughout every weekend that I'm out there. And that story is of Blake Bride. And you just said a second ago, take your time. And Blake Bride's a player that participated in your event and then came to the EHL for a season, went to the North American Hockey League for a season, and then went to the USHL for a season. And of course, now is back home in Colorado at the Air Force Academy playing Division I college hockey because he mastered each level before he rushed, if you will, quote unquote, to that next step. Obviously, I know he's not your son, but he played in your event. When you see a player have success like that, does it give you an extra, dose of pride to see him have that success?
Oh yeah, you love stories like that. And every coach has countless stories, but sadly not as many as they'd like. But those are the stories you'll remember forever. And that is exactly why the various leagues and the various levels are set up. You're not going to go from 17 years old to the NCAAs. It just doesn't happen. So you have to work your way up, and you have to embrace the ladder, as USA Hockey calls it, embrace the steps and the effort that it takes, and you will be rewarded. No shortcuts.
And
so
I have a feeling,
I love that story.
I think I've told it probably 25 times at your event, and I'll probably tell
it's the
another
perfect story to tell.
I'll probably tell another 5 times or so this weekend coming up. For obviously, I'm excited about this weekend. As I mentioned, this is the third year that I've been coming out there. For those that are listening to this, I think we have 7 or 8 of our teams in our league coming out there as well. It's a full schedule for all the players, over 400 players, something that I look forward to every year. And Mike, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and we'll see you later this week out in Westminster.
You bet, Neil. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to The E-Show. Learn more at easternhockeyleague.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, be sure to subscribe and get notified when next week's podcast is released.